Welcome to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, where you can hear your favorite performers talk about how they got started, their careers, and everything in between. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, and on my main Broadway account at Broadway_Corner on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. I am so happy you are here, and today we are wrapping up the Maybe Happy Ending Standby series, talking to a very spectacular standby. The last, but certainly not least, it is Stephen Huynh. Hi Stephen, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you. It's your day off right now. It's a Monday, the dark day for Broadway. And so excited to be talking to you. So a little background about Stephen. Stephen is making his Broadway debut with Maybe Happy Ending as the standby for James and Oliver. He is a New York City-based actor originally from Amherst, Ohio. He attended Baldwin Wallace University, earning his Bachelor of Music in Music Theater. Most recently, he was Wendell Porcupine in the Chicago production of Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas at the Studebaker Theater. That's quite a long title. And he's
It
also
is.
he's also appeared off Broadway in that same show at New Victory Theater. And he's also appeared in shows like Little Shop of Horrors, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, South Pacific. And he may be an actor, but he's also a licensed nail technician, a licensed life insurance broker, and a certified personal trainer. So you are just, an actor, but you also hold many hats, which is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Very jack of all trades.
Yes. Well, it's so nice to, finally meet you in this new year. Like, how are you? How's your 2025 going so far?
I'm doing great. We're 2 weeks in and things are looking great. Maybe Happy Ending is treating everyone very nicely and we're just here to have a good time and 2025 has been rolling right along and it's so cool that I get to be here and get to kick off the new year with you on this podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. It just Maybe Happy Ending has been such an inspirational show, I think, to so many people. It's a very new concept for Broadway, just something that we really haven't seen before. And so it's really exciting just to get to chat with everyone about it. But before we get to all of that, I think we should just talk about you and your journey as an actor, performer. So can you talk a bit about your background, like where you grew up, where you went to school, and just how you discovered theater?
Yeah, so I think I had like a weird path of finding theater and performing. And everybody says that, and ultimately it ends up not being weird. But like I like to think that it was a certain amount of specialness to it. But I originally started in middle school as a trumpet player, and that's how I got into arts and music. And I was in band all throughout middle school into high school. And when I was a freshman in high school, I was doing marching band, and one of our trumpet section leaders was like, "Hey, if you have nothing to do after school, once this is over, come to our theater picnic, where it's just like it's for the high school theater company. Come hang out, make some friends, get to know some people, and see if this is interesting to you." And you know, when we're all like freshmen in high school, we're like, "I need to be cool. I need to have friends. I need to do all these things." And so I went to this theater picnic kind of like with an open mind, but just to see if I can hang out with a new group of people. And ultimately, I fell in love with everybody there, and it was super cool. And so I started theater as a freshman in high school, but I was like, performing's not for me. I can't do that. And I started in sound crew. So I was working backstage, working with audio, miking up the actors, and my sophomore year, I gathered the courage to audition for the first musical that they were doing in a long time, which was Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. And so I made my high school debut as Schroeder in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and I've fallen in love with performing, and that's kind of how it came to be. And I've just been doing it since. Um, and so after high school, I took a gap year to um, do community theater and regional theater around the Cleveland area, which is where I'm from, and prepped for college auditions and ultimately went to Baldwin Wallace University. I graduated in 2021 with a Bachelor of Music in Music Theater, it was quite the time graduating during COVID when everything was very shaky and the industry wasn't sure how to bounce back just yet, but we were very eager to do so. And so I graduated in 2021, moved to New York City, and I've been based out here since. And it's been really cool to be living in the city and having the dream be fulfilled with maybe happy ending.
Yeah, no, definitely. That maybe happy ending is the dream for so many people. Um,
Yes,
and once you get there, it just feels so, so sweet. But as someone who I'm actually in a college theater program right now, I go to Boston Conservatory getting my BFA musical theater, the whole thing.
fantastic.
Um, where, you went to Baldwin Wallace, which is a very, highly esteemed college for a lot of people. And, what was the thing that you took most from it, from your time there? Maybe one thing that always is in your head whenever you're, out performing or something.
Yeah, I think what Baldwin Wallace has taught me really well is to not be afraid of being myself. And like it sounds corny, but like I think college is such a wonderful place to be in that you get to experiment and learn and try all these new things as a performer because it is a safe space to push yourself beyond these boundaries and limits. And if you happen to fall, you have the safety net of the school and the support system there. And so my time in college really taught me to not be afraid of being myself and embracing my imperfections and like know that, it's okay to chase perfection, but it's also not attainable. And so to operate at a high caliber, but know that you're going to make mistakes and live with that is definitely a big takeaway. And just trusting in yourself and your abilities, it's so helpful when you move to New York City, when you're auditioning and you're sending self tapes out into the ether, and you're not sure if any of this is being seen or being appreciated or reviewed or anything like that, and still having the confidence in yourself and your own ability to keep chugging along and to continue to make that groundwork and take those steps forward. I think that is the number one thing that I took away from school is to trust in my ability and just to keep plugging away and taking one step at a time.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think it's important to, trust yourself as a person because you can't escape yourself, obviously. And know that, the hard work does pay off eventually if you just keep going. So that's, I think, a great thing to take from school and something that, I love to hear. And
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about maybe happy endings. So, you've been an actor
Yes, let's.
for a lot of years and just ever since graduation, just doing the working actor thing. And so what was the experience auditioning? Like where did it come from? How did you hear about it? Did you ask your agent? Just what was the whole process of auditioning?
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I've listened to the other episodes with my standby friends, and I'm actually really jealous of how easy they had it when
Oh,
it came
okay.
to auditioning for the show. I say that lovingly because like they are so immensely talented, and you've heard from Daniel, Chris, and Hannah that like they booked it off of like one self tape, and they live up to that expectation. I can say fully with 100% from the bottom of my heart that the trust that the company has put in them is fully there and earned and rewarded. And so, to book off of self tapes is a really scary thing. Um, and like that's what I did as well. So when I first heard of Maybe Happy Ending, it was probably around February or March, whenever they announced that Darren and Shell were bringing it to Broadway, and I was like, "Oh, cool! This is very cool." Michael Arden's directing this, so I know it's going to be very good. And I had previously met Michael through working with his husband Andy Mientis for Emmett Otter's Drug Band Christmas in Chicago in December of 2023. And so I had met Michael and I had worked with Michael for the Lost Boys workshop in February. And so when I heard of this, I was like, oh, that's very cool. And then I didn't think anything of it. And so then fast forward to May, I received a self-tape appointment for Maybe Happy Ending. And I was like, oh, I recognize this. This is with Darren and Shell, and Michael's directing it. Very cool. And I read they gave us the script and like some demo recordings. So I was like, I'm gonna be thorough with this one because it seems like a really cool project. And so I read through the script and played the demos along and absolutely fell in love with the show. And I was just like, even if I don't book this and like if I'm not even if I'm not a part of this, I just want to witness how special it's going to be. And I fully believed in it before I was even a part of it, which was really cool. And so um, I originally taped for it, and for my initial audition, it was to cover Oliver and to cover Gil. And so they wanted two scenes for Oliver and The World Within My Room, and then a jazz standard of any choice for Gil. And so I recorded all of those things, I sent it in, and the following week my agent reached out to me and was like, so casting really loved your tapes. They're still not sure about the whole coverage situation because there's only four of us and we're not sure how many people that they wanted at the time to be standbys. And so they were like, would you be okay with taping for James as well? Just so that they have all the extra um, footage and just so that way they can keep it open. And so I taped for James, which included Where You Belong and another scene where we meet Junsaw, who is part of the James track. And I submitted that, and it was like the very tail end of May, and then we hear nothing for a whole month. And so like June passes along and I'm like, man, I felt really good about that tape. Like there are some things where you kind of just know and
Mhm.
when you do like good work. And I was like, if when I was taping for the my audition, I was like, I just need to get a call back with Michael, and then like that's all I want for me to say I've succeeded. Like that's it. Just to get a call back to be in the room with Michael again would have been everything. And to go the whole month of June without hearing anything, I was like, oh well, okay. I guess it just wasn't meant to be. And so I had already shifted my mind to like onwards and upwards to the next thing. And then the end of June comes along, and my agent calls me again, and he's like, "Hey, so do you remember Maybe Happy Ending?" And I was like, "Boy, do I! Why? What's up?" And he was like, "Well, casting is still trying to figure this out, but you're heavily in the mix, and they just wanted to see some additional songs of you singing and performing, so we can see like the full scale of your vocal range and what you can do. And so music team is really interested in any other tapes that you would be able to send in." And so my agent and I made a little plan, and I think we ended up submitting, in addition to all of the stuff that I already submitted for the self tape, I had like previous self tapes that I sent in. So it was like Epic 3 from Hades Town, and Enjoy the Trip from Bring It On, and Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar, and Left Behind from Spring Awakening. And then I just wanted to send one more thing, and we were talking about it and strategizing, and he was like, think about like Darren's voice, like this would be covering what Darren does. And so I was really cheeky, and I ended up singing Somewhere Only We Know from Glee, Darren's version, the one that he
Yeah.
sang. And that was the last thing I taped and submitted for the show. And I didn't hear about it for another week, and I was like, well, I guess that's that. And my agent calls me on July 10th at 4:18 p.m. to let me know that I was making my Broadway debut with Maybe Happy Ending.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That's a much longer process, I think, than we've been hearing. But again,
Yes, but
things
all through
just
self tapes.
yes, but things always work out if they're supposed to, and so obviously it did in this situation. And the you doing somewhere we know, that's genius, of course.
It was so fitting. And the first day we had rehearsal, I told Darren, and he chuckled and was like, "Good, that was a good choice." So I'm glad that he appreciated it.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a smart choice. Just knowing, that's kind of what they were looking for in the situation and just, fitting that. But that's, yeah, that's quite an experience of just going through multiple tapes and doing all of the roles it seems like that you possibly could have. But it just seems like, when a thing is right, obviously it does work out. So, it didn't
Yeah,
pass.
absolutely.
Yeah, and what was like a moment that spoke to you when you first like read or listened to the show? For me, I think watching the show, the moment that really spoke to me was how to not be alone. That was
Oh,
like
yes.
that hit me really hard when I watched it. So what was that moment for you?
I think when I was first reading the script, before I even taped, something that stuck out to me so much was the decision for him to, oh man, uh, without spoiling the show, obviously. So you and I are in the know, and everybody who has seen the show is in the know, but it's just the finale sequence. It was so sweet and heartwarming, and like I was tearing up while I was reading it, and I was like, this is it. This is something that is so whole and human and heartfelt, and it was so poignant for something that was seemingly about robots, you know. Um, and so the final decision that I will not spoil is what really spoke out to me, and I think audiences will hopefully react the same way I did.
hmm Yeah. You have to see, if you know, you know. So if you
Yeah,
haven't seen the show yet, go see the show. And if you already know,
girls who get it, you know.
yes, that's perfect. And do you have like a favorite, just a favorite moment and maybe happy ending that you either love to watch or love to do, either one?
Yeah, I because I get to um, cover both Oliver and James. I get to witness both sides of Where You Belong, and um, it's such a warm hug of a song and like the whole sequence. And so one of the parts of the show that stands out for me when I get to perform it during both put-ins as Oliver or as James is the moment where they're singing together at the piano in Where You Belong, and they're like playing together and like just enjoying that moment. It's so special, and it's the one time that we get to see those two live the dream that Oliver is waiting for.
hmm
So I think that is one of the highlights of the show for me. And I'm gonna have to copy Hannah a little bit with her answer, but um, when they arrive to Jeju and they're on the ferry, and the part where they're saying, "Did you imagine we'd ever make it this far?" It is such a resounding piece of the whole show for me and for the both of us. When I did it during the put in, and like also when I watch the show as an audience member, it's so cool to hear that lyric and think about the journey that like I've taken personally or that we've taken together throughout the show, and that moment to check in, but also the show as a whole to to see how far along it's come with with the journey that it's taken, and like arriving to Broadway and the resounding um just success and love and support that we've received from the audience. And so it's like a gentle reminder every day of just like this is where we are right now. Like, did you imagine we'd ever make it this far? And the answer is no, but always hopefully like yes. You know what I mean?
hmm
So those are definitely my two favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, no, I was definitely going to ask you if you didn't bring it up about what it's like being on both sides of where you belong. Because I'm like, that is a very interesting thing that you are the only person in the whole cast who does that, who gets to be on both of the sides as Oliver and as
Yeah.
James. And so that's really fun and special. And then obviously, the moment with Claire and Oliver just getting to be like, look at us, look what we've done, and look where we've come from. It's just such a heartwarming moment. And do you have a favorite song in the show? Because I know
I
it's hard.
Yes, there are so many great ones. Um, my favorite song is "How to Not Be Alone," and I know that that's everyone's favorite song, but there's just something about the way that Shell sings it and how the melody's written and the depth of the poetry and the language that just really strikes me in like how complex and yet also simple it is. And so that is my favorite song. It really scratches every part of my brain when I listen to it. Um, and I have to, when I'm performing as Oliver during our put in, I had, and like during our rehearsals, when I'm hearing Hannah sing it too. And Hannah is also incredible as Claire, and I can't wait for the world to see her go on. It's really hard for me to not start like crying at how beautiful they both sing the song, and it's even harder because I'm Oliver in that moment watching Terminator 2, and I can't do anything about it. Like you just got to keep it together. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite song, and then I think because we know that that's everybody's favorite song, I'll give you my second favorite, which is My Little Room Reprise,
Hmm.
which is near the tail end of the show where um, again, without spoiling it, where they both discover that robots can fall in love and the consequences of being retired and having a shelf life that comes after it. And it's just this beautiful song of the two of them processing that moment and figuring out how could they possibly move forward with the circumstances that they're in.
Hmm. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love
So again,
all.
if you know, you know.
People just have to go see the show if they haven't already, because I think
Yeah.
it's something not to be missed, definitely. It's just like the like per it's a per I love it. I think it's like a perfect show to me, at least. Um,
Yeah.
it's just the best, and I was so happy to finally get to see it.
Yeah, I love the show in every way possible. So I also agree it is the perfect show.
Yes. And okay, wait a second. My brain is going too fast. But how did maybe Happy Minute come along? Like what was the most fulfilling part of making that series, and where did it come from, I guess? Because I remember seeing it and I was like, that's
Yeah.
something I would do if I was in a show. So
Yeah, maybe Happy Minute was something that came up in the middle of tech because I was just being silly and like goofy one day, and I recorded like this little quick vlog snippet of like um, our first invited dress, and like that got a lot of like good response on my story and my Instagram, and I was like, maybe I could make like a video series out of this. And I was taking a lot of inspiration from Hannah because Hannah is our social media queen and she's great with TikToks and Instagram, and so I was really borrowing her confidence, and I was talking about possibly doing like a behind the scenes kind of interview series where you get to know the cast of maybe Happy Ending, and so I brought it up to Darren, and Darren was like, "Yes, this is great. I love that, man. And I'm so mad that I didn't think of it myself. So to make up for that, can I be your first guest?" And so to have Darren as my first guest for maybe Happy Minute before I really even knew what it was going to be was really exciting and scary because I was like, what if this ends up not being as good as I imagined? And so I got like the yellow raincoat that we all see Oliver have, and like a red tie, and like my electric toothbrush as a microphone. And we went into my dressing room and recorded a quick interview, and I got some fun questions, and then went straight to editing and had a lot of fun with editing those videos. And I thought it was a great way, especially during previews, to get word out about the show and kind of build some excitement for audiences to kind of know what it is and know who we are and what we do as part of it, um, to do for so that I could help support this show that we've all discovered and loved, and so that's how maybe Happy Minute came to be, and then they just eventually became like silly questions, like how uh what are a few like this or that Quat edition with Hannah, or what kind of Pokemon team Gil and Oliver would have with Chris, because Chris and I both love Pokemon and video
Yeah.
games. Uh, what kind of uh, what kind of cocktail or mixed drink that James would have, because Marcus is a very very wonderful whiskey guy, and so he's very versatile and versed with mixology, which is really cool. Um, Talk about Woobles with Shell, and getting to share a little bit of Dez's actual discography and what kind of judges on The Voice the characters of the show would be with, which was really fun, and Daniel's favorite places to eat,
Yeah,
because we Asians love food.
definitely. 100%.
Yeah, I think I got everybody. Darren was fun too, because I got to um, give some callbacks to his time on Glee and a Harry Potter musical.
Yes,
Yeah.
very iconic things. And I think I loved when you
Yes.
were talking to Chris, I think, and then you both were like, okay, we have to go pick up Jollibee right now. Um,
We were waiting for Jollibee. Jollibee was so gracious to cater for us between shows that day, but they were running late. And so we were like, okay, let's just try to knock out this thing before it gets here. And then like right as we finished, Sarah, our stage manager, announced that Jollibee had arrived, and we were like so excited that like we just like knocked over the camera and ran downstairs to get Jollibee.
yes, I mean, to especially again to Asian people, food is everything, and Jollibee is also
Yes,
everything as well. So,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
for you guys to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
like two Filipino people in the cast, Jollibee is obviously going to have to make an appearance at some point. Um,
Absolutely.
make it a thing for Broadway. And what is it like working with HwaBoon?
Oh, HwaBoon. I HwaBoon is just HwaBoon is incomparable. There are there are no words to describe the level of talent and also diva-ness that
Hmm.
HwaBoon is. And I'm sure you've heard a little bit from Hannah, but um, HwaBoon and I are mending our relationship a little bit after our first put in,
Hmm.
because the moment where Oliver brings Claire in, I picked up Hannah and walked her into the apartment unit, and we grazed the the table that HwaBoon was resting on, and HwaBoon, I we don't know if it was a pure mistake or if HwaBoon was just mad that he had to be at the put-in, but he really took the dive and made a big mess out of it, and so partially our fault, because things happen at rehearsals and put-ins, but I think he really blew it out of proportion. So um, yeah, but we're on good terms. We're on good terms. We've taken better care of each other since, and it's so gracious that he is able to forgive us for that mishap.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm always nervous when it comes to working with HwaBoon now, because I have like hidden trauma because of it. So um, yeah, yeah, yeah,
At least, like you said, relationship is on the mend. That's the important thing. And I think they
yeah,
posted a video today of like with Claire and Hwaboon's like little rivalry a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see
yeah.
what's going on with Hwaboon, the diva. Um, but yeah, just what an important part of the show Hwaboon is, really.
HwaBoon is the anchor of the show. There is no show without HwaBoon.
Hmm. Yeah, I fully
Truthfully,
agree. I fully agree.
yeah.
It's Let's see, maybe Tony nomination for Hwaboon. We don't know.
Forget the nomination; it's the win.
The win, yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
There's no contest.
Yeah, not just, HwaBoon will probably be the most decorated plant of all of Broadway,
Absolutely.
thus far. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but to stop talking about HwaBoon the diva, we'll get back to them at some point. But how did you begin discovering your version of both James and Oliver?
Yeah, so, you know, both of those roles have been such fun adventures to go on. And um, when I was auditioning for the show, Oliver really resonated with me. I was like, I'm Oliver. I identify as Oliver. And so the when I was taping, everything felt really natural and like it just felt right. And then when we got to rehearsal, I was really scared because, when you're covering a role, you want to give your version of it, but also stay within the lines of the proper blocking and like the right timing and all of the things that the regular cast do that makes the show tick. And so I remember asking Michael, how closely should I adhere to what's happening? And something that he said on the first day of rehearsal that really resonated with me was to always feel inspired by, but not restricted to what they're doing. And so, taking what Darren and Marcus both do so beautifully and so wonderfully every night and feeling inspired by the choices that they make, but not to feel restricted in that, like, I need to replicate this exactly. And so it's been a fun mixture of bringing my own choices to the role and morphing them with what's happening already on stage. And it's great that we have understudy rehearsals and stage management because I have the safety of like bringing my take to the role in rehearsals, and then stage management will like guide me towards like if that's a little too far out of what we need for this show, then it's great. And so they'll they'll guide me along in case I need help. And so it's been really, really wonderful and such a surreal experience to almost as if I'm originating the role and then just receiving notes to
Mm,
have it fit the way that the show is running, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. I love that. And I think it is always like a fine line of like, where do you step out of that and where do you stay to maybe what's being done already? And I think, it is such a hard thing for standbys and understudies and swings to do where you have to, you're like the replacement, but not really, but kind of. And it's just such an interesting thing to think about, especially as an actor, of like how do you make it your own while also, being what the show needs at the time. And so how did you approach Oliver's like movement as a helper bot? Because I obviously have only seen Darren do it on the stage, and it's such a specific thing, but like I asked Chris and I'll ask you now, like what was it like figuring out what the movement was like for Oliver, since he is not quite as advanced as Claire?
Yes. So what was really cool was before we started rehearsals, Chris and I were on a Zoom call with our movement coordinator. His name is Moni, and he workshopped with us for an hour um, about like developing a robot movement vocabulary. And so we spent the hour like working on neck movements and like head tilts and like the way that robots would walk or like bend over because they don't have as many bones and vertebrae as humans do. So like it's much more rigid and solid. And so we worked during that meeting on developing like this foundation of what we know like an android would work and move like, and then building upon that in rehearsals. And so for me it was having that movement vocabulary and foundation, and then seeing how far I could stay in the robotness until like I'm affected by what's happening in the rehearsal. And so like it just naturally became this mechanical physicality that I have as Oliver, which I think is really cool because, when I step into the role, I'm not thinking too much
Mm,
about it. It just happens now, which is really cool. And um, it's just one of those things that practice makes perfect. And so every now and then I'm at home and I'm like, how would my head move if I were to do this? And standing up and sitting down. But yeah, it was really cool to have someone meet with us and develop this vocabulary and movement foundation for Oliver.
Yeah, no, I love that. I remember when I saw the show and at curtain call, Darren like went back to being like Darren. And so it was funny for like interesting for me to observe him just go from like this very more rigid way of movement to then going back to like how he would normally walk and act and whatever. And so I'm like it's so cool to see actors just be able to do that so naturally.
Yeah,
Where it's just something that you're not thinking about. And then, when you get to be yourself again, it's just kind of more natural and normal. But again, like the Oliver movement is so specific, but so interesting and so cool to watch. Like especially even just the opening, the moment that you see Oliver on the stage, I'm like, what is going on? Like I did not realize that that is kind of the extent of the movement, but it's so fun to
yeah, yeah, it's super cool.
yeah. And what do you hope audiences learn from maybe Happy Ending?
I think for me, what I learned from maybe Happy Ending is to kind of come to terms with our limited shelf life, right? And so I'd love for audiences to walk out with like a renewed sense of wonder and love for the world around us and for each other, and recognizing that like our time is limited, and it's what we choose to do with the rest of our time with each other here on earth, things like that, and taking and choosing not to take any moment for granted, and falling in love with like simple human things again, like having like a childlike wonder to the world, like seeing fireflies or listening to a record player, or just the simplest things have such complex and high level of magic in them, and for audiences to see this show and walk out with a renewed sense of awe and wonder to the world is really cool.
Hmm. No, I love that. It's again just wanting to experience the world differently because we see what it's like from a robot's perspective, and then how we take that and move into our normal life as non-helper bot beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does it feel like for you as a Vietnamese American person to be in a room full of other Asian creatives doing this show?
It has it has been a dream come true when it comes to being in a room with such incredible artists and people. um you know Growing up in northeastern Ohio, like there weren't very many people of color, specifically very many Asian Americans.
Mhm.
And so I was always used to being the one of like two or potentially three Asians in a community, in a group setting, or in a being. But um, to to be in a room with a majority of Asian Americans is so incredibly special, um, to for me, because I grew up, and when I pursued music theater, I remember seeing Aladdin and was like, that's somebody who looks like me performing.
Mhm.
I want to do that. I think I can do that. And so now to have everybody in the room be people who look similar as I do and I identify similarly as I do, but not like that specifically. Um, it's surreal. And so to be part of that, and also to be part of the group where hopefully a new generation of actors or Asian Americans can look at us on stage and say, I can do that too is so cool and so extremely special. And so I I think being a part of this company and being with such a warm and welcoming group of incredible Asian American artists is incredibly inspiring
Hmm.
for me and hopefully for everybody else who sees the show.
Hmm. I think you've probably heard me say this, but I'm the one who's being inspired, definitely, with seeing the show Maybe Happy Ending and just seeing just something so clearly that is normalized now, more so than it was before, and just being like, it's a story and it just happens to be set in Korea and happens to feature
Yeah,
Asian performers, and doesn't have to just be about our identities, but is about being human, which I think is the most important thing. And what
yeah.
does representation mean to you?
Representation, I touched briefly on it in the last question, is like being able to see yourself on on stage, I guess, and to be a part of that. I think for me, the coolest thing about representation is for an audience member to find themselves in the person that they're seeing, whether it may be on stage, on TV, in film, um, in a video game. Like, you know, it's such a special thing for people to identify with their favorite characters or things that they can see themselves potentially doing in the future and being inspired by them. And I think that is the coolest part about having representation on Broadway and TV and film. It's having more people at the table, having seats at the table. And we're not kicking anybody out of the table, but now we're just inviting more people in. So like it's a larger dinner party that where everybody gets to be a part of it and everybody gets to inspire their own new generation of others to join the dinner table later on down the line.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that and I agree. It's not, about excluding others to have our voices seen. It's about inviting everyone to be able to see themselves on stage and know that there's a possibility that that's even possible for them to pursue. And what is your advice
Yeah.
to those people who will come and see maybe Happy Ending and then have the spark of like, maybe I want to perform? What is your advice to them?
Just go for it, honestly. Like especially, you know, when you're young and you have your whole life ahead of you, what is the harm in trying? Because if you find that spark and you want to pursue it, go for it and have faith and trust in yourself and your ability to pursue this. And if you find later on down the line that that's not the thing that you want to do, that's totally fine, but at least you tried and at least you figured that out, right? And so it's all about the shots that we make or sorry, it's all about the shots that we take and whether or not we make them is like it doesn't matter. It's the fact that we took the shots to begin with. And so having the courage to follow through is extraordinary and it will help you go so far, not only in this path if you choose to take it, but like anywhere in life that you happen to go afterwards. And so I think it's great advice regardless of just like chase after your dreams. And even if you happen to change them later on, you can still keep going.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about just going for it and trying because what's the harm in
Yeah.
um
Right. Like Shia LaBeouf says in Nike, just do it,
yes.
you know? Or as Claire says, let's do it.
Let's
That's
do
it.
it. Yeah, no, just go for it if it's something that you really love. And to wrap it up, how can everyone continue to follow you on like social media, whatnot, to keep supporting you and your journey as a performer?
Yeah. So number one, buy tickets to Maybe Happy Ending. that's where I currently work on Broadway now. So, as long as we keep supporting the show, I get to continue to be there and live this dream. And it's super cool. And I'm so thankful for all the love and support that everybody has given the show so far. Um, but if you want to support me personally, my Instagram handle is Huynh underscore ing. So S my last name underscore ing. I made it up in middle school because it's Huyning, so it's like Stephen Huyning. Anyway, um, but that's my Instagram. I fear that TikTok may not be around much longer, but the handle
Well,
is the
we
same.
will see.
We will see. But those are my two social media thingies.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Stephen, for being on the pod and, helping us wrap up this Super Standby series. I did not expect
Absolutely.
doing all four of the interviews, but I'm so glad I did. You guys are all so incredible, and it's been amazing getting to just chat with all of you. Thank you to everyone listening. Please make sure to follow Stephen and continue to support Maybe Happy Ending because this is a show you're not going to want to miss. But thanks so much for listening to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. Bye. You've been listening to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.